I am Brad Keelor. She is Shobha Bhatia. Coming up next on Director's Cut, find out the most rebellious thing that she did as a kid. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every single week, I sit down with a different GI member who has so many stories to tell. Some are personal, some are professional. Viewers, you know the drill, but every single one of them is fun. Today will be no exception. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, after you watch this interview today, head over to geoinstitute.org, and there you're going to, I guarantee, I guess, that you'll learn a lot about GI unless you already know all this stuff. You'll find out that we're a technical society, that we have about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are, of course, part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And if you like what you see today, and I always say you will, and I haven't broken my promise yet, viewers, you should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. Joining us today from Syracuse, New York, where she is a faculty member at the University of Syracuse, and two other very important things. She is a Geo-Legend. That was in Geostrata in 2020, so 5 years ago. She became a Geo-Legend, and she is the 2025 Koerner Lecturer, which you can, of course, watch at Geotechnical Frontiers in Louisville in just a few short weeks. But she is Shobha Bhatia. Shobha, welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Welcome.
We are going to have a good time today. We have 10 questions, the same as we do every week. And two of those are the same that we ask everybody every week. And we start with one of those. Describe your job in 45 seconds.
Oh, so I am a faculty member in geotech engineering at Syracuse University for more than 40 years. And in this time, I have taught hundreds of undergraduate, graduate students about geotechnical engineering, and involved then in research in geotechnical engineering and geosynthetics.
It's really hard sometimes. I think my son is a freshman in college right now, and it's really hard for my wife and I to explain to him in any way the way things have changed in higher education since then. I mean, for you as a faculty member that whole time and at the same institution, what's one of the biggest changes you've seen during that time?
I think the biggest change is the media. How you really, what I used to teach, I used to use a blackboard, and I'm a short, so I used to stand on a stool. And that was my first lecture. And then I started using transparencies and then PowerPoint. And now we can teach the classes via Zoom. So technology has really changed. I don't think learning has changed. Students have changed, it's the technology.
You have to answer this one, though. Did you have one of the slidey blackboards? I had a physics professor who had the one that you could slide, and one class, the notes would be insane. Every single section of that board would be full, and it was a nightmare, I feel like. Did you have the slidey board?
I don't like the whiteboard, sliding boards. Mine was a blackboard, really made of slate, but it was very high and board was very long. So I'll have literally a stool on which I'll stand and write and then erase it and write. So I remember that was a torturous way of teaching. I enjoy writing on transparency because I don't need to climb on a stool or anything like that. I don't like PowerPoint as much, but I combine that with the writing on the board. So I think
That's
really
the
like
best
this
way.
type.
Sticks with
writing.
Students better, I think, anyway.
Yeah.
We have to ask the fun questions when you get on Director's Cut, too. And a lot of them are nostalgic. And you've got several nostalgic questions in your list of 10, Shobha. That's either good or bad. I don't know. I think it's going to be good. I think people are going to like it. So the first one for you is, what is the first thing that you remember making ever in your life?
I think this is a tricky one because I remember maybe my first grade or something. We were supposed to make an art project. Okay, and my mother was a painter, so I always saw her doing the watercolor. So I wanted to make something different. I started collecting leaves, different dried leaves, different colors and feathers because birds and I made a collage. And I thought it was pretty good, but since then I really intrigued by the leaves and the colors, and so that was my first art project.
Wow. Did you ever feel a lot of pressure doing that stuff when you were a kid because your mother was a painter?
Uh, Actually, I think no, because she never said that you should do this. You should do painting. It was just I watched her doing painting, so I was always intrigued, and I love colors. But I thought that leaves, we had a big gardens, all kind of flowers, and those colors always intrigued me. So I wanted to put these colors in different ways, combined with feathers. So I think she encouraged me to try different media to use that.
That is fantastic. We are going to roll right into another question where we're going to talk a little bit, I guess, about it's not the recent past so much anymore, but we've got a whole sequence you're going to take us through here. This is always the research question, the third question. And we're going to talk about reuse of materials, but you've got some stuff you're going to lead up to that with about the first project that you ever
Yeah.
worked on and how that took you to where you are today. So that's enough. You can go ahead.
So my first project, I just finished my master's in earthquake engineering from Roorkee University, and my first project, I went to Madhya Pradesh, which is the center part of India, and they were building around 100-meter high earth dam. I was in a project site for 10 days. I was the only woman on the team. We were doing liquefaction test at the project site. This is the first time I noticed that how much soil is and rock is needed to build a dam. And I saw thousands and thousands of workers, particularly women, carrying that soil on their head. So I wonder at that time, where are they bringing this material and excavating, and what's going to happen to that land or area where the material has been excavated? And I think since that, this has been a question which I always wonder. I live in Syracuse, which is known for a lot of limestone quarries, and we have tons of glacial till and glacial material. So there are a lot of pits here. And just behind my house, there's a big, large, 1 mile away limestone quarry. And over the time, I have observed and I asked students to observe how much limestone has been taken out. And all this waste is just piling and piling and piling. For last 30 years, I take students, we go to a Tully quarry area where we bring sand and silt for our research. And I've seen over 30 years how much material. I mean, amazing, almost 50, 60 feet high, beautiful sand and silt material already gone. And I wonder, all these open pits, what's going to happen? So I think this is the question is not just I'm wondering, I want my students to know that this natural material is not unlimited, first of all. They need to think about that and think about recycled material. And more importantly, they have to think about when we are piling this waste, what will happen to that? If it fails, what's going to happen to that? And I think this leads to this failures which are happening all over the world on mine tailing. Just them to be aware, not only just for teaching and for them to know in future, but for my research also. So this has been an important question for me, for students to know the soil is not unlimited. Nature has given us, and we need to be wise in using it.
So as you've seen this play out over several decades now, I mean, I feel like I ask this question to anybody anytime we start talking about sustainability in engineering, but it's a good
Yeah.
question. That's why. I mean, are you encouraged by the way things have gone over the past, let's say, let's just pick an arbitrary number, 25 years as we move towards greater sustainability in engineering? Or do you think that we could still swing back the other way and that it's a constant thing that we just need to be vigilant about how we use our resources?
I think we have to be vigilant because the need to get minerals and metals is tremendous, growing in every time. In some part of the world more than others, and if we don't pay attention, we can go back easily. We can go back. So I think it's not as a faculty member. I feel as a researcher, I feel it's our responsibility to make it sure that not only for us that what we do work, but for future generation, they are aware of that.
That is a great answer. I like that a lot. I told you we were going to do a lot of nostalgia today. And the question that we teased at the beginning of the interview is the one that we're on now. What is the most rebellious thing that you did as a kid or young adult?
So this is a kind of interesting, and actually, I asked my daughter and my son. So, and so I was a pretty straightforward, serious child. So, for my memory, I think the things which I thought I was able to hide from my parents. So during the exam, I'm studying it. I was a good student, but I will hide storybooks within my textbooks. So I thought my mother didn't know that I was reading storybooks. I'll read for 1 hour, study, and then I'll read storybooks. I didn't know that. I thought I was just being very smart. Till I reached to the 10th grade, which is a board exam, and exams are a certain frequency. And first exam, I came back home, and my mother gave me two brand new magazines she bought. So she said, "This is for you to relax." So all along, she knew that I loved reading storybooks along with my work. And I thought I was very smart, but I think mother knew it all. And I think this interest of mine continued. Uh, but I couldn't think about anything else that I did as a child, which I can put in this category. But reading books, storybooks
But
was
that
one.
is a really good one. And something we talked about before the interview is how do parents just know these things? I mean, when you became a parent, do you feel like you got some extra sense where you knew when your kids were up to something that they shouldn't have been doing?
Some of it, I think technology has improved, so easy to hide things now. More than that, it used to be physical things. Now we all have smartphones and a lot of things. But I think you do have sense for your kids. And my children are grown up, but still they will tell you, "How did you know that we were doing that?" Yeah.
I feel the same way. I am 45 years old and I feel like I can't hide anything. For even my mother-in-law or my mother, they know what's going on before we tell them, I feel like. Another nostalgia question in here, but this is one that I had to put in here. It's kind of funny. When I start writing the interview questions for these things, there are always one or two that are the first ones that I put down on the list. And this was the first one for you. You are so closely associated with the Women in Geotech workshop series, and this started in 1989, and you were the PI on this.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask, when you started these workshops now 36 years ago, what were your hopes for them, and how have things turned out differently than you thought they would?
I think I'm glad this is a question I'm answering that. So in 1989, I was faculty and I just got tenure. Okay, tenure was done. I had one National Science Foundation grant. So through that, I knew Dr. Tom Zimmy. Okay, he was a program director. So he called me one day and he said, I would like you to put up a workshop at National Science Foundation and invite women faculty in geotech. I didn't know any other women faculty in geotech at that time. And actually, I was the only woman faculty in my entire college. So I never really interacted, but I was excited. So I made a lot of phone calls. I knew somebody, and there was no internet at that time. And it turned out to be we were 8 women faculty across the entire country. And so I had these names, and there were 3 other from industry. There was one from Mary Ellen Hind Gift Griffin. Uh, so Dr. Tom Zimmy said, invite all 11 because you're only 11. Okay. So once the workshop was approved, we 11 of us met in National Science Foundation, Washington. Tom Zimmy was there. Uh, we didn't know what we were going to talk about it. Okay, there was no pre-planned agenda for that. But over 2 days, we discussed and we found most of that similar challenges. Okay. Now, for me, that workshop played very important role because through that I met some of my colleagues. I'm still friends with them. I find comfortable time to time. They have called me and I have called them, and we have worked together. And then I think later there were other workshops, but in 2016, Rick Fergesi, in between, he also funded some workshop, which I was not leading. But 2016, we submitted a proposal, and Tom Zimmy funded that. That was with Ada and Patricia Gallagher. And that was exciting project because that kind of project has never been funded by National Science Foundation. And part of that project was connecting women geotechnical faculty. And by that time, we had probably 72 women faculty. So I have a database collected for entire geotechnical faculty. And from that, we see how the changes. And 2 major workshops plus 32 mini grants were awarded for collaboration,
Wow.
talking about mini collaboration amongst themselves, women, but including men, not just men, on new project, on new research project. I think that made, in my view, a great impact that has never been done before. And through that, these connections were established for many women geotechnical faculty.
So we got to have a couple follow-ups here. The first one is that you mentioned Tom Zimmy. And we talked about Tom a couple of weeks ago when Russell Green was on. And next week, Victoria Bennett's going to be on, and we're going to talk about Tom again. Do you have any memories of Tom other than with this workshop that you want to share?
Tom was faculty member from RPI. And so right in the first year, I went to give a seminar at RPI. That was common. So I got to know Tom. Tom is the easiest person, fun person, really genuinely nice person. That's how I remember. I invited Tom to give a seminar at Syracuse University, and Tom has his own plane, and people know that. And while he was coming to Syracuse, his plane was stuck on a tree. Okay. And he was safe, but I remember that. And then I met one time and he said, you want to take a flight? I'll take you to the plane. I said, no, I don't want to be stuck on the tree. So Tom was really, really wonderful. Every time you meet in a conference or meeting, he remembers you. His son was a student at SU, so he came a few times at SU, and I think he is fondly remembered by many, many people.
The other thing I have to ask is, I mean, how you feel about seeing successive generations getting involved with these workshops and with, diversity issues in the field in general. I mean, it's got to be a little bit like being a really proud parent, right? To see the next generation of people coming up and getting involved.
Yeah, I actually, to be honest, I didn't know when I started my career that this will be path I might take. It happened with this workshop, but I want to share that I started similar effort at Syracuse University. It's called Program Women in Science and Engineering. So I was a department chair, and there was another chair, a dean's ASCE, and we just finished 25 years of WISE, Women in Science of Engineering, and that program is funded by the provost now. So I think I am very proud of work which we have been able to do with my students on research, but I'm equally proud what has happened with both WISE and geotechnical women faculty. And you're right, you feel like at this point very proud parent.
That is really cool. Thank you for walking us through that whole thing. That's fantastic. I mentioned that we always have two questions that we ask to everybody, and it's that time where we ask the second question that we ask everybody now, Shobha. So I guess it's another nostalgia one. Sorry, you got a lot of these this week. How did you first get involved with ASCE and then GI?
So when I got the faculty position at Syracuse University, I did my PhD at University of British Columbia, Canada, and my advisor was Liam Finn. So as I was joining Syracuse University, a couple of things he told me I will still remember. First, he said, don't show off, okay? You be modest there, okay? Which I think, and second, he said it's important to go to the conferences and attend or part of professional society. So when I came to Syracuse, I went to a couple of conferences and I met a faculty member, Dr. Suren Saxena. I'm sure a lot of people remember him, Illinois Institute of Technology. I didn't know him before this meeting him, and he and I went to the same institution in India. So he said, you're starting your career, I want to give you some advice. And he said, you need to join a professional society, ASCE chapter or some member, and be active there and get to know them, your other colleagues. And same, my colleague in Sam Clemens was also instrumental to make sure that I have funds to go to this. So I think Dr. Saxena's advice, I will never forget what I didn't ask for, but he volunteered. And then I became a chair of Soil Dynamics Committee. I was chair for 6 years there. And he says, stay there because you're doing a good job and you get to know people. And then I really enjoyed, and there were lots of other colleagues, Mishaki again, I remember, very supportive of that. And after that, one committee to another and another, and I was member for TCC. So I really enjoyed working with people, and I give this advice to any junior faculty who joins our department in other areas, be active in your professional society. So that was my journey.
We always tell people there are only two criteria to get involved in technical committees within GI. One is you have to be interested in the topic. Yep. And two, you got to be a human being. If you meet those two criteria, you can probably get involved with the technical committee.
That's right.
So that's our message to all the viewers today.
Human being, but you need to do some work for that.
Oh yeah, well we tell them that later after we get them in and they start coming to meetings. So you mentioned UBC in your answer there. We're going to talk about Vancouver in a minute, but before we have to talk a little bit about where you are now, which is Syracuse. And I don't think I'm going to break any news to anybody here. Oh. It's cold in the winter in Syracuse. You've made it through 40 years of this now. I'm impressed. What do you say to somebody who's scared of the winter in Syracuse?
So before coming to Syracuse, except in once in Vancouver, there was an inch of snow and whole city was shut down. Okay. So I came to Syracuse. My husband was already a faculty member a year ahead. So I came to visit him December. And I remember I didn't have winter shoes. So I walk in with my sandals in the snow. And I will never forget that, how cold it was. Now, living in Syracuse, we are one of the snowy city. We get around 160 inches of snow in a year. But I will say that in 40 years, Syracuse University has been closed only one day due to heavy snow. Okay.
Wow.
Only one day. So they are very good. City is very good cleaning the roads, and campus is very good. So that's one thing. You still have to be careful not to slip and things. But if you like winter sports, then it is wonderful place. I didn't. I do one or two times skiing, but I used to take my kids for skiing and sit down and read a book and drink a soup. I enjoyed that part very much. But if you like change in seasons, okay, this is a beautiful city because your spring is just as you're talking about daffodils. We really appreciate when we see daffodils coming in March, end of March, sometime in April. And fall is just spectacular. So if you like change in season, then sometime February, March becomes very hard in winter and you have to get out of it. You have to go to some sunny place. So that is way to really live. So I think I would say don't be scared. Okay.
That's why you see all those cars with the New York license plates on I-95 and I-81 at that time of year, right? And
Yeah,
then
going
in
down.
March they're coming back north or early April. But that was good. That was a good endorsement. 160 inches of snow though. It's kind of a lot. I don't know if I could
It
do
is a
that.
lot.
We have to ask a little bit about Vancouver. And you mentioned earlier again your time at UBC. You were there in the late 1970s. We just had Geo-Congress in Vancouver last year. So a lot of people had that have that fresh in their minds. And Vancouver is, of course, now super cosmopolitan city. Very cool place to live. A lot of $1 million condos and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
right.
Describe Vancouver in the late 70s to everybody. What was good about it? What was bad about it?
So I think great question. And so I was a student. So I'm going to talk about as a student. So this is I took my flight from India. I landed up in Vancouver. I heard about it, but I think it is one of the most beautiful city I ever lived. So as a student for last 2 years of my PhD, I lived on campus and my apartment was on 16th floor on and the view I remember mountain, ocean and downtown building with the light shining on the sun. And that was my most favorite part sitting in the morning having breakfast with my roommate or one of the roommate from Japan and we would sit 10, 15 minutes just watching that view. So it is one of the most beautiful cities. So that is one good part. I do remember eating first time different food, going to Chinatown with another roommate of us from Vietnam. So some of those things were wonderful experiences. Bad, Vancouver was very expensive city. I mean, I think 75% of my stipend I would pay for the rent. So we were very, very poor students because it was very expensive city. So that was not good part. Ugly part was, I think, a foreign student, there was a prejudice. I think people thought that they were particularly from coming from India because there's a very large Indian uh, immigrant population there, have been there as a farmer or worker. So when you go out of the campus, people thought you are a cleaner or you are a
Mhm.
worker. I remember clearly going to downtown with my husband buying some shoes. So I'm talking to this lady who's selling the shoes, what type of need in English. And there's a 10 minutes conversation till she said, "Oh, you speak English." She didn't know I was talking to her in English. She just ignored that part.
Wow.
And I think so. Some of that was bad because that was the first time I experienced that. But I didn't feel that thing was on campus. It was just going outside. Uh, but I think, again, coming back, it is, if people have not been to Vancouver, go there. It's one of the most beautiful.
And in that shoe store, you didn't get any snow shoes or winter appropriate ones that would have
No,
saved you
no,
from your pain in Syracuse. Wow.
no. I think they don't have the snow, so they don't know what
That's
snow
true.
you really need. Yeah.
I like that a lot. We have two questions left, and one that I had to put in here. You've had a long, distinguished career. I don't even know how many publications you've had. It's got to be easily triple digits and probably significantly higher than that. What publication throughout your career are you proudest of?
So I think, Brett, this is a very hard question. And because for me, a publication is not just my publication.
Mhm.
When I see a publication, I see a student face with that. It is really the work which I've been able to do with different students. And if I thinking about from early 80s to 90s and now, I moved in different research areas. Okay, I was worked as a PhD as an earthquake and soil dynamics. Then I did work for image processing and soil filters. So there was a publication came with the Japanese Society, Japanese Geotechnical Journal. I thought that was very interesting and new work. I've never done that. Then I did extensive work on geotextile and soil erosion project, and that was with a couple of students who did masters and PhD. Jennifer Smith, one of them. Then I worked with polymers, synthetic polymers. So it's switching to new area again. And now I'm working with mine tailing and biopolymers. So in each of the area, there's some publication which I feel it's a really new work I've been able to do. And it was challenging because it was totally new direction. But it was exciting working with students and moving to the new area. So that's how I remember my publications.
That is a great answer. I think that's perfect, and I didn't expect you to really choose one.
Okay.
So I like that a lot. We have to ask for our final question about the Koerner Lecture, which, as we mentioned at the beginning of the interview, you will be delivering in Louisville in like 3 weeks from the time we
Right,
record
yeah.
this. It's coming up. For you, what is the most exciting thing about being selected to give the Koerner Lecture this year?
So I started my research in geosynthetics because of Dr. Koerner. I attended a short course in New York, and first time I heard what there's a geotextile, I had no idea. And I brought a sample of that, and at that time I was working on image processing, so I did image processing of geotextile. And since then, that's a long story. Uh, I think I really admire him as a teacher. I mean, all the things he had been able to do and gave it to community in terms of books and in terms of case history. As a researcher, I think he is one of the most extraordinary collaborator. Uh, and one unique part, I thought he was very humble and kind human being. And when you talk to him, I had few times, uh, you feel that he's listening to you, he's paying attention to you, and very genuinely nice person. So it's a great honor. It's really unfortunate that he is no more alive, but it's a great honor to be recognized or known as a Koerner giving Koerner lecture. This also gives me a chance to thank GMA
Mhm.
because their support, providing material, helping my students throughout for teaching and research, this will give me a chance to thank them. And thank many of my collaborators and my students in a large public way. So they really made my professional career truly enjoyable and happy one.
That is fantastic. Do you have a favorite like personal story about any interactions with Bob Koerner other than the one you just told?
So Grace Huang and I, another former student of Dr. Karna, we organized a specialty session in Geo Chicago, 2016, I
Yep.
think. And So there were fantastic speakers and all of that. A day after the conference or the session, I was at the hotel checkout, and Dr. Koerner was behind me. Okay. And with him, his grandchildren were there. Okay. So he stopped me and he said, "Thank me for organizing that." Then he introduced me to each of his grandchildren. So this is Shobha Bhatia. She organized it. She's great. And I thought that was such a kind. I mean, he didn't need to do that at all, but he made me feel very special. So he is that. I will never forget that.
That is great.
Yeah.
So I've asked everybody, I think, or almost everybody who's come on Director's Cut who had some kind of connection with Bob about their favorite story. And my favorite thing about it, well, it's two things. One, nobody tells the same story twice. Everybody has a different story about him. And the other thing is, you didn't know I was going to ask you that in advance, and you had one ready to go. And that is the same case for everybody. The memories they have of him. I think one of my favorites so far, and people have to go back and watch the episode with Roman Hrichu where Bob Koerner came and partied with the students and they flooded the dean's office at Drexel. I think that's an all-time great, but they're all really good. And wow, what an amazing reflection on him too. That was fantastic. So thank you, Shobha. And we will give a shout out here to GMA, the Geosynthetic Manufacturers Association. We'll put a link to their website down in the show notes below the window where you are all watching this interview right now, so you can find out more information. And of course, you want to be there in Louisville in a couple weeks to see the Koerner Lecture. You can go to geotechnicalfrontiers.com to register and get all kinds of information about the conference. And we hope to see you there. So Shobha, you made it through all 10 questions and all the bonus questions, and you did a great job, and it was lots of fun. For our viewers out there, if you liked what you saw, and I hope you did because you're here at the end, you should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel, which, by the way, this is episode now number 207 of Director's Cut. You can watch all the past episodes while you're on the YouTube channel as well. So Shobha, thank you for doing this. Thanks for all these reflections and everything.
Thank you so much. This was really fun. Okay.
That's always the word I'm looking for. It's got to be fun. For everybody out there, we will see you next week with another brand new episode of Director's Cut.